Welcome back, everyone. Long time no see. It's been a hot minute. When was the last time I streamed? I think it was August 3rd. I think my last stream was day 3. Yeah. Is that right? No. Can't be right. Is that really the last time I streamed? It was gone all last week? Yeah, I guess it was. Wow, yeah, I guess it was. Well, sorry I was gone for so long. Doing a little vacationing, a little summer vacation. It was super nice. Definitely needed it. But now I'm back, and I'm ready to get back into Smaugust stuff. Actually, I was doing Smaugust stuff the entire time I was gone. As I told you guys I would be. And also as I told you I would be, or that I thought I might be. I didn't quite keep up with it the way I hoped I would. I was working on it all week, but I wasn't really doing 2 hours every day. I was sort of sneaking in little moments of time where I could work on it. But I don't think I ever did a full 2 hours until yesterday. So I might add a little time on later on in the process. Because I didn't do the full 2 hours every day. So if I need a little extra time at some point, maybe I'll tack on like a half hour or something at a certain point. But today, I don't think we'll need a ton of time. My goal today, and we'll see how far I get on this, is to just come up with 9 thumbnails. So we have a design settled, right? You know, the point of this project is to make a full finished illustration, sort of like splash art. And the reason I spent so much time on concept art is just because when I'm posing this character, I want to make sure that I have all of the pieces of the anatomy and the armor and everything just clear enough for me to understand, so that when I actually draw her in the pose, I have all of that information. And that's why I didn't spend quite as much time on the dragon form as I did on her human form, because the main focus of the piece will be her human form, with more of a suggestion of what her dragon form is, sort of behind her. Turn this music down just a little bit more. I don't know if it's as loud for you guys as it is for me. Let me know that all the mixing sounds good. So now that I have all of this concept art done, maybe I spent too long on it than I should have, but you know what? I'm happy with it, so I'm fine with the amount of time that I spent. But now we're going on to thumbnailing. So now, thumbnailing is not something that I've talked a lot about on this channel. So some of you might not know exactly what thumbnailing is. So I'll go over it kind of briefly, as succinctly as I can. Thumbnailing, a thumbnail is kind of like what most people would probably associate with the word thumbnail, like a YouTube thumbnail. It gives you the basic gist of in this case, an illustration. In YouTube's case, it's a video. In this case, it's an illustration. And when you make a thumbnail, basically what you're planning out are things like composition. That's the main one, right? Where everything is going to fall on the piece. So, for example, I'll use one of these thumbnails here, and I'll give you an example of what I mean by composition. So let's just say I'm doing a forest scene. You know, maybe I want to put a tree here, right? And then I have and maybe I want to make that darker. Right, there's a tree in the foreground, and then in the background, I want to make it a little lighter, so I'll do, you know, then there's some mountains in the background, right? And then maybe in the very, very foreground, we have a person standing on a hill or something, right? There's our human character. They're pretty robust. And there's I don't know, maybe there's some dragons flying up here or something. So that's and that's not a great composition either, but that's the point of thumbnailing, right? Is you're trying to plan out things like composition, value, perspective, all of these things that are kind of hard to just do on a whim and put it into your piece all in one go. So you make these little tiny thumbnails and you do pretty much almost as gestural as this. You do it kind of quickly. You want to sort of get the ideas out quickly. Not a lot of detail, not a lot of information. Really just all you want to do is get things like distance, light source, all of these things that are kind of tricky and sometimes people consider to be afterthoughts in the illustration process. This is the place where you sort of figure those things out. Like, you ever got to a point in your illustration where you're like, okay, I have my character, now I want to draw a background, but the background is kind of awkward and it makes the character look sort of strange? That's because if you're not considering that from the very beginning of your process, it will end up looking strange and unconsidered, because it's not unconsidered. You want to sort of do all of that thinking at one point and then go in and add your details and everything else. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to do a couple of very loose gestural ideas for the composition of this piece, and I don't even know if this is going to take me the full 2 hours, because like I said, this is a very quick process. We don't want to spend too much time on each one of these. We just want to get the basic information down. So it's kind of be sort of like the illustration equivalent of a brainstorming session. If you guys have any ideas, things that you might want to include or add, because I only have a couple ideas off the top of my head. So as we get into this, if you guys have ideas for what the composition could be, please feel free to let me know. And yeah, we're going to get into it. Just like that. What brush would be a good brush for thumbnailing? Let's go into my subjectively oil paints here. Maybe the wide scratchy brush on oil panel. I haven't actually used this one. I want something that can sort of give me a taper. That has some nice... Oh, that's just because the opacity is not all the way up. Doesn't really have the taper I like. Let's do... Oh, let's start our timer. First of all, actually, we're on the clock. Let's go ahead and start that timer. 2 hours, starting now. Oh, and my phone timer, too. My phone timer is going to be a little desynced. Alright. And how about my old rendering bristle? There's a little taper on it. I'll use that one. Alright, so my first idea that I had for a thumbnail was very dramatic. I wanted to have this sort of action pose. I think I'll bring the actual ground down a little bit. So the thing about illustration that always frustrated me as a young artist, before I really had any sort of professional education, was that feeling of having a vision in your head and not being able to put it down on paper. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. I'll worry about cleaning up around the edges later. And part of the reason I struggle with that so much when I was younger, and I still struggle with it, I think all artists do, part of the reason I think I struggled with it when I was younger is because I rushed things. I moved too quickly to a point where, you know, all I wanted was to get the thing out on paper. Get it down so other people could see it. And when I did that, I ended up skipping over some very important steps in a process that would, if I had done it a little bit differently, have improved, or rather allowed me to better convey the image in my head onto paper. The other thing I'm going to do, actually, is I'm going to bring up on my screen, you guys won't be able to see it, but I'm just going to bring up, just so you guys know what I'm doing, I'm just going to bring up Shavana's concept art that I made for her. That's going to be on a separate screen. If you guys hear, well, I'll show you guys just real quick. So I have that up on my screen, on my computer screen, looking at it right now, just so that I, can keep consistent things like her silhouette. So the first idea that I had, I wanted her sort of mid-action with some Z space utilization. So for those of you who might not know, when we're talking about perspective in 2D imagery, you have the X space, you have the Y space, and then you have the Z space. So X and Y are up and down, but Z is forward and back. So if something is going through the Z space, that basically means that it's going to be foreshortened, and that it's coming either at the viewer or away from the viewer. The other thing I wanted to do in this artwork is sort of exemplify or illustrate what we were talking about, how Shyvana's armor will explode off of her as she transforms. Do we have any specific values that I use for foreground, midground, and background colors when thumbnailing? So I always do thumbnails in grayscale. I don't mess with colors yet at this point in the process, but I do make sure that I have values. So foreground, well, it depends. You don't have to do it this way. Usually people do it, foreground is the darkest, background is the lightest, but there are, ways that you can subvert that. I can't say that I'm very good at subverting that yet because I don't do full scenes that often. I don't often do entire illustrations that have multiple characters and all that. Usually I just do character designs. So this is going to be as much a learning process for me as it will be for any of you, maybe even more so for me. And hopefully I don't give you guys any bad advice because, like I was saying, this is something that I'm practicing right now. It's not something that I do nearly as often as I should. So I'm going to see, like here, I'm going to make this shoulder coming behind Shyvana here. I'm going to make this a little lighter just to discern the foreground and background. Get rid of that tangent so that it's clear that that's coming into the foreground. And what I'm doing here in this part of the illustration is I want to show her armor shattering. And I'm gonna get some fire in there. So something in my concept art that I did was I wanted to play up the dichotomy between Shyvana's human form and her dragon form. So, for those of you who don't know, when Shyvana transforms in League of Legends between her human form and dragon form, the resource that she consumes in order to transform is called Fury. And it's, not super relevant to her lore that it's specifically Fury. It's really just when they designed her, they needed a resource other than mana or stamina, or I think Rage is another one. Anyway, I think Renekton also uses Fury as his resource. It builds up with auto attacks. But I wanted to sort of actually incorporate that in her visuals. So let me go back to the concept art that I did here. In her human form, she wants to try to stay composed. She wants to stay a little, seem less dangerous. She's living in a society. She's in a society. We really truly live in a society. She's living in a society where people are very afraid of anyone who has any sort of magical capability. So she is trying to sort of assimilate herself into that society, into those social boundaries and constraints. And so the whoa, sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. So the look here is sort of contained, I think is the word that I would use. Her hair is all tied up. She has really long hair, but it's all tied up. She's in this big, bulky armor that almost looks like a tower that she herself is trapped within. But then in her dragon form, and again, I didn't do a ton of concept art for the dragon form. Oh, not that. Where's her dragon form? There's her dragon form. But in her dragon form, I wanted her to look almost insane. This is just raw rage that she herself sort of wants to contain, but it will come out eventually. So in her dragon form, all of the armor shatters away. She doesn't have any of that white anymore. She doesn't have any of that Demacian white armor that has broken off of her, that petricite. That's all gone. And now she's just sort of this untamable force. And I wanted to sort of have her hair be super, I wanted to have hair on the dragon. I wanted the dragon's hair to be wild and flowing. It's no longer contained. And so that is going to be, this thumbnail at least, will be sort of that transition from our Demacian Shyvana to our dragon Shyvana. Spider? Okay, I need to get a spider for Claire. Let me know. He's just eating bugs. It's probably one of those really venomous spiders that can kill you just by looking at you. Have I ever played League? No. What is League of Legends? I've never heard of this game. It sounds fun. I'm sure there's no toxic community. Surely everyone is very kind and respectful in this community. I just watched a clip from Kesha EU, you know, the streamer, the Nunu streamer, whose whole bit is that he's just fucking insane. That's his MO, and he just, I don't watch his streams. I just get the little YouTube shorts recommended to me, and he was just berating his audience about how summer is over, and how the audience did nothing all summer, and I found that pretty funny. But no, surely the League community is respectful.
All right, I feel good.
Thank you for the sub, Justin Jackson.
All right, I feel good.
Pull up this concept art again. Does Subjectively even know about Mobile Legends Bang Bang? Yes, I know about Mobile Legends Bang Bang. I got ads for the game for a while, and I remember thinking that was back, you know, before League of Legends had their own mobile game, and I remember thinking like, wow, how this is just clearly just League of Legends, but for mobile. There's like absolutely they're like not even bothering to disguise that it's League of Legends but mobile, and I was like, why has Riot not done something about this? And of course, you know, there's no legal precedent. You know, they can't sue anyone for making a character that looks like Ashe because Ashe is super generic. But they did eventually just make their own mobile game, and I was like, oh, there we go. Because they must have been like, wait a minute, how is this game so popular? It's literally just our game, but for people who don't have PCs. One in the morning for DJ Naomi. Thank you for joining us at 1 a.m. Please feel no obligation to stay. If I were you, I would be very eepy right now. I'm not a stay up late kind of guy. I usually like getting my sleeps in. Usually just like can't stay up, like straight up unable to stay up late. Even when I was younger, I didn't really like staying up. More of a daytime operator. So, like I said at the beginning of the stream, I'm very new to, well, I'm not new to it, but I'm not experienced with thumbnailing. And something that I want to get better at is sort of figuring out what information is important for me to include and what information I can just omit. You know, because really the whole point of thumbnailing, at least at this, for me right now, is just to figure out, you know, which possible composition, because the other thing is we're going to try out a lot of different compositions. This was the first idea I had, and a lot of the time when I am doing an illustration, I usually just go with my first idea, which can be alright. Sometimes that works out fine. But more often than not, if you give yourself a little extra time to come up with a really strong idea, it pays off. And I have a lot of time right now. So now, in this one, I don't know, in this thumbnail, I don't know if I gave myself enough room to include a dragon, or her dragon form. I did want to include the dragon form in the splash art, but I gotta figure out a good way to do that. Maybe this pose isn't the best. This is why we thumbnail, because maybe I'm finding out now that I'm not going to be able to fit a whole dragon in the same composition. I think I might also do, I might try to do this same thumbnail again, and I might try to do it with line work first and then add value, because I think I'm confusing myself with some of these shapes. It's a good idea when you're thumbnailing to sort of keep everything that you do. You know, even if you're working on a thumbnail and you're like, this is a mess, I don't like this, I want to move on. Go ahead, move on, but keep it. Don't get rid of it. I know I have a habit of, you know, when I'm working on something that I don't like, I just want to get rid of it. Just want to get it out of my face. I don't want to look at this anymore. But it's usually a good idea, as often as you can, to just hold on to all of them, because even if you hate it and you think you hate everything about it, there might be something in that illustration that you find worth keeping. I'm getting rid of this. That's far too distracting. Blue fire with red fire make her skin pop. Oh, that's interesting. I might try that. So now the other thing about this piece that I'm doing right now is I don't want to, a lot of times when we do like our fixing League Champions videos, we try to emulate the style of painting that is commonplace in League of Legends. And I don't necessarily want to do that. I'll probably reference a lot of League of Legends splash art because I really like League of Legends splash art. But I don't think I will... I'm not going to try to make it look as much like League of Legends art as I can. I think I would rather do something a little bit more in my own style. Or more specifically, sort of figure out a painting style that works well for me. I don't paint very often. More and more I have been. Have I seen the D&D movie? No. I haven't seen it yet. I watched Barbie on vacation. Barbie was fantastic. If you haven't seen Barbie yet, that's definitely a big recommend from me. Yeah, Barbie was actually a little emotional. I was not expecting that, but it was a very beautiful movie. I said this about Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, but it also applied to Barbie, where, after seeing Spider-Verse, the way the characters were written and the way the story progressed, and the whole themes of the movie overall, I was like, wow, this, sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, wow, this is good. But I watched both Barbie and Across the Spider-Verse. I was like, oh, this is a movie that makes me feel proud to be a human. I know that sounds like super abstract and kind of sappy, but like that's literally how I felt. I was like, wow, being a human is so beautiful, and you can do so many different things, and yeah, it's tough and it's frustrating, but it's worth it. Because what we have, what we can do as humans, makes all the pain and suffering worth it. I know that sounds super cheesy and that I'm just like, I don't know. I'm being sincere. I know it sounds like I'm doing a bit, but I'm being sincere saying this. Spider-Verse was also very, very good. Spider-Verse... I mean, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is probably my favorite movie. I really can't decide if I like Across the Spider-Verse more. I really love both of them for different reasons. But I just love all the themes in Across the Spider-Verse about parenting and feeling like you belong and expectations and all of these different things that are so relevant to all to everyone. Everyone feels this way at some point in their life. And you know, watching that just made me feel like, wow, you know, being a human is hard, but it's so worth it. And I felt the same way watching Barbie. Again, a lot of themes of you know, the way the world sees you or treats you, and how you sort of react to that. And, you know, feeling things. You know, acknowledging that not everything is perfect. Acknowledging that there are problems and there are issues and there are uncomfortable feelings. And there are flaws and doubts and sadness. And how feeling those things is what makes us human. And I love that. Couple Lemons just joined as a member. Subjectivist, thank you for joining.
Thanks for that, tough guy.
I haven't seen, I want to see it because it looks good. I don't know if it's out yet. I think it is. But the Seth Rogen Ninja Turtles movie also looks super cute. I don't know if it's going to be like a life-changing movie, but I like the way it looks. I love the casting for the Turtles. You know, I was never been like a super Ninja Turtles fan, the same way I've loved Spider-Man, but I watched Ninja Turtles a lot as a kid, and again, seems like movies of themes of like acceptance and the general insecurity of being a kid, feeling like you don't fit in, you don't belong somewhere, feel like people are making fun of you. And I like that sort of emphasis on the teenage part of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, Miles is a great... I mean, all of the characters in Spider-Verse are so good. I love how they all sort of play off of each other's themes. I loved how, if you consider Spot to be the main villain, I love how Spot sort of has the same problem that Miles has, where he feels like he is inadequate. He is the problem. He is someone who doesn't belong. You know, from the very beginning, Miles is calling Spot villain of the week, that he doesn't even deserve the respect of Spider-Man, and because of that he becomes the biggest threat to the multiverse, and he becomes the villain because of that. And you know, then Miles is put in a similar position, where he is told by Miguel that he is the only spider person that doesn't belong there. And sort of the way that the protagonist and antagonist both react to the same external stimuli is what makes one a hero and makes one a villain, which I think is pretty cool. When you're working on something like this, like a thumbnail, you know, again, I'm talking from my own perspective, but it might apply to some of you guys if you work similarly to the way I do. It's very easy to feel like, ugh, this doesn't look good. I don't wanna keep working on this. But you know, you sort of find things along the way, especially when you're working digitally. Like, it would frustrate the hell out of me when I worked traditionally, that, you know, I would start drawing something and I felt like, ugh, this doesn't look the way I wanted it to look. I'm just giving up. But especially when you're working digitally, and, you know, well, I'll talk about it in two different senses. When you're working digitally, if you don't like the way it looks, just keep working on it. Just keep working into it. Undo. You know, use the select tool, delete, reverse, warp, twist, use a different color, paint over it. But find it, you know? Keep working into it. Don't give up on it just because it doesn't look the way you want it to look right off the bat. I think that's how a lot of artist block happens, actually. You know, someone starts working on something and it's just not the way they wanted it to look. And, because of that, they just sort of lose momentum. And it's a very easy thing to do, and I tend to do it a lot. But if you just keep working into it, you know, don't give up on it. Not yet, at least. Oh, thank you, Cup of Lemons. I really appreciate that. When I was at Mass Art, when I went to college, I had a professor who was an illustration professor, but he also created the animation department at my school. There wasn't an animation department before this guy, and he always said, and I agree with him, that to be a good animator, you need to be a good illustrator. And to be a good illustrator, you needed to understand animation. And, you know, there's a lot to unpack there, but basically, what he's saying is the basic principles that are required of a good animator are also required of a good illustrator. And vice versa. And I tried taking an animation class in college, and I hated it. You know, because at least the way my school taught it, you know, you do like super, you know, old school rudimentary cell animation, which is important. But it drove me crazy because I just wanted to draw dragons. I think Shyvana herself could take up more of this composition. Alright, let's keep going. I want to do 9 thumbnails. And I feel like I've spent quite a bit of time on this one now. I'm just going to merge these all down onto one layer. Sort of as a way to force myself to move on. Clean up around the edges. So, like, again, you know, I could look at this and I'd say, there's nothing really wrong with this. This is alright. I could turn this into a full illustration. But I've only just started. And there's a lot you can do, you know, once you've loosened up a little bit. You know, your first idea is alright. Your second idea might be good. Your third idea might suck, but your fourth idea could be the best one you come up with, and then your fifth idea might suck. But it's good to sort of explore all of them because you're never sure. You might not know which one you end up with. Right, so for this one, just for the hell of it, just for shits and giggles, I'm going to tone the canvas. It's not a canvas yet, but I'm going to take my little thumbnail here, and I'm going to make the whole background dark and see what happens when I work from a dark, because there's going to be a lot of fire. Whatever my final composition is, I want there to be fire. So let's see. Let's work. Let's take one of my sketching brushes. Let's go into Havoc here. Take one of my sketching brushes. Sketch in white. And let's do one where we have let's do one from underneath. So bring this down. Head's gonna be a little bigger. Thoughts behind the scenes of media like video games. I genuinely enjoy the story production from its early concept. I think it's very important when you watch something that you enjoy to learn about the process behind the scenes, either by reading concept art books or listening to podcasts or watching bonus features on the DVD extras. I always loved watching those as a kid. I guess most things don't come out on DVD anymore, but now you can just watch YouTube videos and stuff where they do behind the scenes. But I think that's very important. I had a professor at Mass Art who told me not to think like a consumer, but to think like a producer. So, I think the easiest way to describe this is, or at least the easiest way I always thought of it, was like the difference between watching Superman and saying, that's unrealistic that he would be able to catch Lois Lane as she fell from the sky. She would just break her back on her arms, versus watching Superman and saying, this would be a very dramatic scene here if Superman caught Lois Lane out of midair and saved her life. right? The difference between looking at something from the perspective of a filmmaker or an illustrator or a game designer versus the perspective of someone watching it, you know, the person who that was catered to. You want to be able to look at it and say, what were the creators thinking when they made this scene, instead of what were these fictional characters thinking? Because, you know, that might be relevant to the fictional world, but the fictional characters are saying what the writers and the directors and the animators, they're doing what they told them to do, what those real people told them to do. So if you want to get into that field, you need to be thinking about what the real people behind the scenes were thinking, not what the character was thinking. Not if Luffy would be able to have won that fight if he had done this, this, and that. Luffy does whatever the writers tell him to do. So you have to be able to think from the perspective of a writer or a producer or an animator and be able to say, okay, well, what would we do here that we think people would like? And a good way to do that is to watch the behind the scenes. So yes, I do love going behind the scenes. I've been watching a lot of the Always Sunny podcast. I don't know if anyone watches It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but that's one of my favorite shows. And I love hearing about their process. Because when I was a kid, that's how I thought all TV shows were made. Like, just a bunch of friends getting together and taking what they thought was funny and turning it into a TV show. And that's pretty much what the process of creating It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is, you know, according to their podcasts. And I love that. Alright, so this thumbnail is a little bit more like the thumbnail that we did when we did our Shyvana redesign video all those years ago. When did we do that video? That was like 2 years ago. Back in a time when I thought that Shyvana was actually going to get a VGU. I know better now. How do the shoulder guards work? I actually did part of the concept art that I did was exploring how those arms would bend, because I love the shape of them. I love how they look so confining. But I knew drawing them, I was like, oh, these are going to be... Oh, do I have it? Oh, I don't have it on here. I can show you on my iPad, actually. I knew that they were going to be a little confusing when I actually tried to articulate her arm. But basically, I imagine that the shoulder guards fit over the shoulder, come forward across the shoulder here, over onto the breast, and then over around the back. So they do a kind of full loop around, and they come out far enough that she can articulate her arm underneath it, and that the armor underneath it can move freely. And the shoulder itself, the guard would rotate with the shoulder. But I really liked that shape of it, so I wanted to keep it despite the fact that it looked so... And it probably would be completely impractical in real life. And maybe like, yeah, there's no way that would actually work. But really all I needed to do for my purposes was just like make it look as if, you know, just inform myself how it would be able to bend and move for, you know, in an illustration. Vacation was fantastic. Thank you for asking. It's really nice. I did some hiking, did some swimming, had some drinks, got some good sleep, did some stargazing. There were some good good stars out. I was up in Acadia National Park, and the skies are just clear up there. It's so cool. And I saw some shooting stars, which was pretty cool. Welcome, Javix. Glad to have you on the stream for the first time. Maybe suspicious low-key official. I wish. I wish. Riot Games, if you want to just, like, take this design, if you fucking want to steal this design from me and make it Shyvana's official VGU, feel free. I don't even care. I just want to see Shyvana get a real VGU. You don't even have to credit me. Just steal it. So I'm not going to have any shape over here. I want to have all of the movement moving this way. Oh, we actually did a Cho'Gath redesign video. If you want to look through our redesigning League of Legends playlist, Claire and I designed a new Cho'Gath. I'm just unsure how it would work with emotes and stuff. Holding her hands up. I mean, just don't hold her hands up. Just picture like Garen or Darius or Jarvan. All these characters with giant shoulder blades, they just never put their hands up over their heads. You don't need to do that. Just have her emotes not do that. Part of the design was that, the intention behind the design was that she looked constrained, that she was limited inside her armor. So I don't have a problem with it seeming like there's limited movement in her arm, as long as it doesn't keep it making from look like she can punch, swing out like this. That's really all that's important. I mean, she's not supposed to be fully articulate. Plus, the other thing about this is not a VGU. Really, my goal here is to create an illustration, a finished illustration. So I actually don't really need to worry about things like that for my purposes right now. Really all I'm worrying about is a nice finished painting. And if the problem is just that she can't raise her arms above her head, then in the illustration, I won't raise her arm above her head. Daxy626, you are very upset. I listen, you might absolutely be right. She might not be able to lift her arms over her head, but it's not my priority right now. I appreciate the concern for Shyvana's ability to lift her arms over her head, but it is not my priority right now. I think you have a good point. I think that in general it's a nice idea to be able to consider every point of articulation in a design. And I would say maybe if I was working for Riot right now, they might say, hey, change this design, she can't lift her arms over her head. But really, all I'm doing right now is making this illustration. That's my project. And she won't be lifting her arms over her head for this illustration. I feel like also I'm imagining like maybe she can't do this, but she could do this. You know, the shoulders could just rotate backwards. Like it again, it wouldn't make sense in real life, and probably even in her model, like some things would clip. But look at any of the characters in League of Legends that have giant shoulder armor. And they probably do the same thing. Again, like Mordekaiser is another good example. Like those arms probably shouldn't be able to articulate the way that they do. But they just do, you know? It's more about, again, this is sort of what I was talking about before with like, oh, well, Superman, if Superman caught Lois Lane in his arms, she would just die. Because his arms are like steel, so she's just falling from the sky into steel at the exact same speed. So technically she would still die. But you know, the point of it is not to, you know, test the laws of physics. The point is to create an emotional scene. And the same thing with character designs. Like, yeah, maybe it's not practical that she's wearing this armor, but it serves a purpose in regards to the way the character is conveyed. Like in Monster Hunter, like, the armor in Monster Hunter makes absolutely no sense in terms of articulation. You know, you wouldn't be able to move in most of that stuff, but it does look cool. Hey, Nicky boy. We're doing some Shyvaning today. You know me. I can't leave well enough alone with this. So we're back on that Shyvana shit. Eventually I'll make a video that's just redesigning Shyvana every day until Riot gives her a VGU. And I will do it until I have children and they have children. Really, my goal for this month, I almost did, so my goal was to spend 2 hours every day for the entire month of Smaugust on One Piece, and I almost did Smaug for this challenge. I wanted to do an illustration of, you know, Smaug himself, you know, the namesake of Smaugust. Smaugust. But then I decided, like, oh, this would be another excuse to draw Shyvana, and I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to draw Shyvana. I have this concept art. Maybe I should find a way. Let me put the concept art up on the screen somewhere so that you guys can see it too every time I look at it. Let's see. Just put it here. That way you guys can see the same reference images that I'm looking at. She looks very happy. There she goes. Now she looks like Meliamuse. The Croc from League, I think you're talking about Renekton. Renekton was one of the first champions I ever played in League of Legends. You know, it's funny, actually, when I first started playing League of Legends... Boy, when did I first start playing League of Legends? I think like 2014 or 2015. I was just playing it as a bit because my association with League of Legends at that point were these ads that I would get. I'd go on like Bulbapedia or something, and those ads that showed up like on the side of the screen when you were scrolling on a browser, they looked so bad. It was like Rise and Katarina. I remember these ads so distinctly, and I remember thinking, wow, that game looks like fucking shit. Like, that looks so stupid. So I had never played because I thought it looked so dumb. Based off of like the limited advertisings that I had seen for it. Now, at this point, like a lot of the champions that I find cool now did not exist yet. It was sort of at a point where League was like transitioning from being just like a small indie MOBA to like a gigantic, like standard setting, international phenomenon. And they were like actually starting to hire artists and stuff and like spending some time designing characters. I think the first new champion that came out once I started playing was Echo. I think I started playing right around the time Echo came out. And at that time, when I started playing, I was playing for the bit. Just thought it was funny. I remember seeing Shyvana. My friend told me, my friend who had already played, they were like, oh, you should try Shyvana. She's a dragon lady. And I was like, that sounds awesome. Let me see that. And then I saw Shyvana, the way she looked, and I was like, oh, that's not that cool at all. And so I didn't really play her that much because I didn't think she looked cool at all. So I played Renekton because he had a skin that I really liked. He had Pool Party Renekton. which I thought was hilarious. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna play until I can. I thought I could save up. I didn't realize the currency to buy skins was like real world money. So I thought I was gonna play until I saved up to buy it, and then I realized there were two different types of currency, and I was like, fuck. But at that point, I was already hooked. So I got Pool Party Renekton, and the rest is history. I started playing Shyvana when my friend who introduced us to the game was like, okay, so you should probably pick an actual role to play instead of just going... My friend and I would do Renekton Tristana top because we had no idea how roles worked in the game. So my friend was like, you should pick an actual role and play it. And I didn't like any of the roles except for jungle. I thought jungle sounded cool. So they told me, they were like, oh, you should try Shyvana again. And I was like, alright, I'll do Shyvana. And then I did Shyvana jungle, and I kind of liked it. But the whole time, I remember thinking, like, this champion is so... Like, this is the... Because at that time, Aurelion Sol didn't exist either. So, like, that was the dragon champion. There was, like, no other cool dragon. And I was so disappointed. What do I think of Viego? I mean, personally, I don't like Viego's not my kind of character aesthetic, but I think he was a successful design. I've looked at the concept art for Viego, and like some of those concepts are really cool, but I don't think any of them, like visually, like they just look cool. But again, we have like, you know, the difference between looking at something from the perspective of a consumer versus looking at something from the perspective of a producer. And as cool as those other designs looked, I like the design for Viego that makes him look like a petulant man-child. Because that's really what he is. Like, he thinks he's tough and scary and edgy and epic, but really he's just a spoiled prince. So I like I mean, again, like, it's not my favorite kind of character design. I usually don't just like a guy with a sword. Like, that's not super interesting to me, but I do think his story is interesting, and I think he fits his story visually. I think if he looked like, you know, like a Lich King or something, it would imply that he actually has a lot of power. And, like, he does have power, but it's not, like, inherent power. It's just the power of being a spoiled brat. And saying, Mommy, I want it now. I liked old ASOL, but I also like new ASOL. I didn't like it for a while after the VGU came out. Or not the VGU, just the rework for ASOL. Obviously, to get a VGU, you just got a kit update. But I didn't like it for a while because all of a sudden people were like, Aurelion Sol is so OP, nerf this champion, he's broken. And I remember thinking like, he's kind of just as impactful as he was before. It's just that he's much easier to play now, so everyone's playing him, and people, like, are aware of how strong he is. Like, yeah, he didn't have, like, a stacking scaling kit. He didn't have an execute. He didn't have percent health damage. But he was still a very impactful champion. It's just that he was hard to utilize effectively. Which was, you know, obviously a deterrent, keeping people from playing him. And I'm gonna be honest, like, when I first started playing ASOL, I picked him up because I was like, Cosmic Space Dragon? That's fucking awesome. And then I started playing him and I was like, oh my god, this champion is really hard. And at this point, I was still fairly new to League of Legends, and I didn't understand a lot of the basic mechanics of the game. So playing ASOL at a point in my history with the game where I barely understood, general mechanics, like those mechanics of positioning and spacing and roaming. They were tough. They were tough to figure out. I would play Asol more often if I played mid lane, but Claire is our designated mid laner in our 5 stack, so I stay in the jungle. And I did try Asol jungle after his rework. It's definitely possible. I mean, it was possible to jungle on Asol before the rework. Really, you just... I mean, because like Asol's one of Asol's strongest, well, it used to be. Now his strongest thing is late game scaling, but it used to be that his strongest attribute was roaming, and you could just do that on jungle Asol. You just literally just like, take 2 camps, or just take 1 camp. Take E, take Q, and just fly into lane, hit a big AoE stun, give your bot lane a double kill. Alright, I'm gonna move on from this thumbnail. I don't love it. So I'm struggling right now with perspective and depth, which is why I'm doing thumbnailing at all. And this is what this is practice. I appreciate the sentiment that I am already an infallible artist, and that everything that I put pen to paper to just becomes an immediate masterpiece. But there's an ugly in-between step there, which is what you guys are watching now. It just takes a little time, takes a little patience. And for now, we're just figuring stuff out. Actually, we did a video a long time ago where we redesigned a Verdrian. Is that what it was called? The, like, gray alien-looking motherfucker. And it was actually a lot of fun. It was fun learning about those old champions. And it was an interesting challenge, taking a concept that was so underdeveloped, from a time in League of Legends history where the champion design team was far more limited than it is today. And, thinking about, like, okay, how can we modernize this? And it was a challenge. But that was a long time ago, and, like, we kind of rushed it. But it was still fun. And I would definitely do that again. Penka was eating in her sleep. Alright, let's see. What are we gonna do for another idea? Let's do one. Both of these, she's been very angry. Let's do one where she's a little bit more pensive. Let's do like a Thanos, like, superpower pose. First time here, Cosmic Curiosity, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So this could be cool. This could be sort of a way to show both sides of Shyvana. Her like calm, pensive, constrained Demacian armor form, and then sort of have the dragon behind her, sort of looming behind her, ready to burst out and destroy at any moment. Drink lots of water. That is a good piece of advice for everyone who's watching. Yeah, when I was up in Maine, there was such a beautiful respite from the oppressive heat that we've been having down here, and I kind of forgot how hot it's been getting, and now I'm out here again. And I live in Providence. Like, this is Rhode Island. Like, we're already pretty far north, but we're still, like, what is it right now? It's 28 degrees outside right now. Celsius. Which is like, what is that? It's like 80 85, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, I think. It's hot. My favorite Spider-Man from Spider-Verse, in the movie, I love Miles. Who doesn't love Miles? But I think my favorite is still Peter B. Parker. I've always loved the Peter Parker Spider-Man. When I was a kid, I know you're gonna say, "What? Really? That's so shocking." But as a scrawny, nerdy white kid growing up in New York, I very much identified with Peter Parker, and growing up, I loved seeing all the different iterations of him, and I don't ever remember one quite like Peter B. Parker, where he's just so flawed and so, just figuring it out. He's an adult. He deals with adult things, but he's not perfect. That's always been Peter Parker's thing. But I love the way they do it in Spider-Verse. And I loved in Across the Spider-Verse, he's starting to figure it out. But there's still things that he's unsure about. Raising kids, had the stance to take with Miles. He's kind of conflicted between doing what he thinks or he was told is the right thing, but then that's sort of moral ambiguity, right? Like, yeah, he understands that in order to save the multiverse, Miles has to let his dad die, but is he going to let this kid who he helped become a superhero, is he going to just stand back and do nothing? Or is he going to try to stop Miles? And he doesn't even really know. And I like that. I like that a lot. So, last two thumbnails I did, I was trying to sort of paint in values and shapes and stuff. And I think it's a good experiment, but not that it's surprising. But I'm finding that working from line work is a lot better for me. And that's just because I have a lot more experience. That's my preferred approach to any kind of illustration, is to start from line. I like this. I like these two different moods expressed here. We have Shyvana in her Demacian armor, looking, you know, contained but not subdued, you know? And then next to her, we have her dragon form, which is just rage incarnate. How much time do I have left? About a half hour? I saw a couple of people comment when I posted the turnarounds for Shyvana's human form. They were saying, you know, why does she have her belly exposed? Why does she have midriff armor? Doesn't make any sense. I'll be the first one to say it, because it's hot. You know, I don't want to confuse anyone here. Like, sex appeal, I don't want to invalidate sex appeal as a legitimate aspect of character design. Like, sex appeal is relevant, especially in a game like League of Legends. You know, literally sex sells. My problem with sex appeal is when the sex appeal in question, if you will, is so constrained that it only refers to one body type or one gender or, you know, one kind of personality. Because, I mean, let's be honest, that's just denying a lot of people a lot of good horny material. And we don't want to do that. So yes, there's no practical sense in having an exposed tummy on a dragon warrior. And yet, a tummy she will have. You know, I said Dragon Warrior and I immediately thought of Kung Fu Panda, and you're right. Poe's Belly is out. Oh, I gotta watch that again. I love Kung Fu Panda. That's such a fucking good movie. Top 5 DreamWorks movies. For sure. Alright, top 5 DreamWorks movies. Number 5. Oh boy, I'd have to look at a whole list. Alright, so up there, obviously, Shrek. That's my number 1. Shrek is my number 1. Never won't love Shrek. Kung Fu Panda is probably number 2. Road to El Dorado, number 3. I'm gonna have to look at a list. Because I'm trying to decide, like, I like Shrek 2. Oh, no, Puss in Boots. Okay, I can put the new Puss in Boots movie on there for sure. Actually, Puss in Boots will probably come before... Yeah, Puss in Boots... And then maybe, honestly, Shrek 2. Like, is that bad that I have 3 Shrek movies? Shrek-verse movies on the same list? I love Shrek 2. Like, Shrek 2 is one of those sequels where I can't decide if I like the first one or the second one more. And, like, I love the animation in, like, Joseph in the Technicolor vest and, oh, they call it something else in that, don't they? And then, like, The Prince of Egypt. Those are both fantastic movies, but they're not my favorites. Just me personally. They're very dark. You know, dark biblical stories. So, like, they're good, but, like, I wouldn't say they're on my top 5. I haven't played Sekiro. It's one of the few FromSoft games that I haven't played. But I've watched a lot of gameplay of it. And I'm tempted. I have a lot of games that I'm playing right now. I'm sort of in one of those phases where, like, I can't stick with one game. I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV. I've been playing... I haven't been playing a lot of League. I've been playing Pokemon again. Scarlet and Violet. I just got into the Pokemon TCG. Kind of. I'm not committing to that yet because I'm not ready to start spending money on... Actually, no. These eyes, they should be facing the same direction. Both should be looking straight at the viewer, I think. I'm not ready to spend money on that. And Magic, because I also play Magic. Started playing Endless Space 2 last night with some of my friends. Haven't touched that in a while. I'm still trying to beat Red Dead Redemption 2. Plus, Spider-Man 2 is coming out this October, and I gotta pre-order that, because I want to play the shit out of that. It's one of those games where, like, you know, sometimes, like Starfield, I'm kind of waiting to pull the trigger on Starfield because, like, it seems good, but Bethesda games are a crapshoot. They're either going to be, like, the best game of the decade, or they're going to suck, and they're just going to be a meme. So, like, I'm sort of waiting to see what people say about Starfield. I am super excited for the Scarlet and Violet DLC. Like, I know Scarlet and Violet is got to be one of the most divisive Pokemon games. Maybe one of the most divisive games, full stop, in the past couple of years. Because, like, it's a good game, but it's so hard with the terrible... Like, really all it is the graphics and the bugs. And, like, that's not all it is, because that's big. Like, I don't understand why there are so many issues with that game. There really shouldn't be. And that's incredibly frustrating. But, like, other than that minor thing, it's such a good game. It's definitely one of my top 3 favorite Pokemon mainline games that I've ever played. You know, it's just terrible frame rate and weird, like, unfinished low resolution graphics and bugs, which fortunately I haven't experienced a ton of bugs in my game. But, like, the other things really make it hard to play, but I still love it, and I'm excited for this DLC. I'm good, Mateus Samuel, I'm good. Yeah, the story was fantastic. I want to do a video about Koraidon and Miraidon and how much I love those legendaries and how much the role that they played in the story made me feel like a kid again. I've talked about this so many times, but, like, I haven't gotten that sensation of feeling close to my Pokemon the way I did when I was, like, 7. I haven't gotten that feeling since I was probably, like, 10 years old. But Koraidon, as a story character, and the way they wrote it into the story, made me feel like I was friends with my Pokemon again. And it was so nice. And I wish that the graphics were as nice and finished as the story and the writing. And the designs, I mean, so many designs from Gen 9 are just out of the ballpark, fantastic. I was just talking this morning about how I really love how there are designs in Gen 9 that are just simple. They're not insane, like, specific references to anything. Even I like those designs too, but I like the fucking weird ones. Like, I love Bramblin. You know, they were just like, I don't know. It's almost like a Gen 1 design. It's just like, I don't know, fucking Tumbleweed. That's a Pokemon. But it's like, it's not half-assed like Seal. It's still a cute design. Skeledirge, oh my god, Skeledirge I love so much. Koraidon, Slitherwing, Mousehold, I love Mousehold. King Gambit. Yeah, that final battle in Scarlet and Violet, where you use either Koraidon or Miraidon, and you can finally battle with it, and like it's great. It ties in the gameplay with the themes of Pokemon so well, of growing and becoming stronger as friends, as partners, facing your fears. Oh, I love it. I'm saying spoilers now, but I feel like most people, at least in this chat, have already played. I want to do a really dramatic light source here. Like she's trapped inside like a fortress cell or something. For my birthday, Claire got me this. Not this. This is from mini golfing on my actual birthday. But I just love this so much. There aren't a lot of Pokemon that I want like toys and plushies of. Like there are a lot of Pokemon that I like. I wish there were more Magikarp toys. I have like this guy. But I feel like there should be a little plushie of Magikarp. Or a big plushie actually. I want that Appleton like life-size plush, but that'll never come back in stock. But this guy. I love this guy. No, he lost his pirate flag. There you go. Here. There's your pirate flag. There you go, King. Oh yeah, Project L. I'm excited for Project L. I'm not really a big fighting game guy, but I'm a big League of Legends guy. I'm excited for that. I think that's going to be a fun game. I'll probably suck at it. Just like how I suck at League of Legends. But, nonetheless, I'm excited for it. So this is what I'm saying. Like, this is the third one I've done. I'm almost out of time already. But I definitely think this is the strongest thumbnail that I've come up with thus far. So it takes a little time. It's important to give yourself time. You know, actually, for my birthday, in addition to that awesome Koraidon plushie, Claire made me a custom design Malukata shirt. It's this cute, repeating pattern of the little pot and Malukata's face, and then a little pattern that's like the swirl of Malukata's eye, and it's very, very cute. And she said that one's just for me. That one we're not going to make for sale, but maybe one day we'll do some Maza merch. It's never too late to get into League. 2014 is actually when I got into League. I was just telling that story and about how I didn't want to get into League because it seems stupid. Just visually, I did not like the way that the game looked. And then they fixed their shit. Whoopsie poodle. What was my favorite subject in school? Jeez, I haven't been asked that question in a long time. Recess. I guess the easy answer is just art. If art is a subject in school, I was a terrible student. I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD and bipolar, and it made school somewhat difficult. On top of a somewhat stressful home life. So I really struggled in grade school. The only class I could ever feel confident in was art class. I used to like science when I was younger, but then science required a lot of math. And once science started requiring math, then I was like, oh, I'm not very good at this. I just like looking at animals. That's the kind of science I like. I guess I liked lit. You know, I liked papers. I kind of liked writing papers and analyzing literature. I liked discussing about literature. You know, I liked having, like, as they call it, Socratic seminars. I enjoyed that. Actually, the only AP classes I ever took were literature. I took AP Lit. I took a forensics class my senior year of high school. Just because that sounded super cool, and my school didn't have a lot of classes like that. So it was kind of exciting when you heard, like, oh, there's a forensics class, and I was like, wait, really? That's cool. That was cool. I liked forensics. The teacher was also super chill. Oh, I took a computer science class. My senior year of college too. I did like I think it was Python. Can't remember what program we were using. I'm pretty sure it was Python. That's what it's called, right? It's not Anaconda. It's Python, right? And that was fun. That was a good teacher. I had a lot of friends in that class. We played a lot of Pokemon in that class, actually. I was one of those classes where the teacher was super chill, and she was like, as long as you finish your work, you can fuck around. So we played a lot of Pokemon in that class. That's where I learned about the competitive Pokemon scene. still have dreams where I go back to my high school. Some of them are stressful. It's really funny. Some of them I have dreams where I'm like, you know, in a stressful situation that was commonplace in high school, or I'm like taking a test, or I have a paper that's due and I don't have it done, or, you know, cumulative reviews. I don't know, did anyone else do cumulative reviews in high school? Anyway, sometimes I'll have a dream where I'm in one of those situations, and it stresses me out. I'm like, oh, fuck. And then all of a sudden in my dream I realize, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm 27 years old. I have a full-time job. I graduated college. I have a wife and a dog and my own apartment. Why am I doing this? And then I'll just like get up and leave from the classroom. It's an oddly satisfying dream. Did I apply for Riot Games Studios like a job at Riot Games Studios? No. I've never applied for a full-time position at Riot Games Studios. I kind of like working for myself. I don't really have, at least not right now, I don't really want to go after a job like that. I mean, it would be cool to work for Riot Games, but I enjoy making my own schedule. I enjoy not answering to someone. But nonetheless, if they offered me a job, if Riot Games came knocking on my door, unprompted, well, I don't know. I don't know if I would do a full-time job. If they asked me to, like, come on as a designer for, like, the Shyvana VGU, if they were like, hey, you've been doing a lot of Shyvana work, you want to come in and help us out with this? And I got paid for, like, remote freelance work, that'd be cool. But other than that, I don't really know that I want to work full-time for Riot Games. Or designing a skin. That would be really cool. Oh! Well, there's my timer. So that's that. I thought maybe I could do 9. But I ended up only doing 3 thumbnails today. Let's just clean up this last one. So, here's the question now. I really like this last thumbnail that I did. Do I spend a little bit more time brainstorming a couple of other thumbnails, or are my next 2 hours going to be starting my painting? Because I'm past the halfway point at this point, I think, in terms of how much time I have left. Let's see, it's day 14, so I'm not quite past the halfway point yet. But we're close. What do you guys think? Should I go forward with this thumbnail and try to turn that into my final piece? Or should I spend a little bit more time brainstorming a different thumbnail? Because that's the point of this challenge, is to spend more time on a piece than I normally would. So I think giving myself, I already gave myself that extra time. I think I should utilize it. I think, but I don't know. I'll probably do it because, like I said, I have a little extra time banked from over vacation where I wasn't really doing 2 hours a day. So I have a little extra time I could sneak in there. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do a few more thumbnails. I think I should do a few more thumbnails. Because, like, I feel like I'm only just now hitting my stride with the thumbnails. Like, the first two, okay, I'm kind of finding my footstep. Okay, now I'm at a point where I'm making some thumbnails that I really like. So this is only the first of potentially many thumbnails that I could do. All right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do more thumbnails. Cool. Well, thank you for your feedback. And that's it for today. Thank you guys all so much for hanging out with me. Don't worry, we're not going to have another huge pause in the action anymore. That was just my one vacation. The rest of the month I am free. So every day for the rest of the month, I will be streaming for 2 hours every day working on this piece. And we'll see how that goes. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.